Hi everyone, hope you're doing well, hope you're looking well for yourselves. We've got another episode of Behind the Curtain. Hopefully at this point you've all finished your exams and all your coursework's all done. And for students who are currently in their third year or final year of university, you would have either found out whether you're graduating or not. So congratulations for those who are graduating and for those who I guess are going into the next year of university. Now with Behind the Curtain, you know that we have some deeper dives into conversations that we sometimes have had on the podcast and sometimes ones that we haven't had yet. And we've got an amazing guest speaker today to dive into the area of, jobs that students can do while studying, what they can do to prepare themselves for life after university and things like that. And what better way, as I always say, I don't want to tell you about the guest speaker myself. It's better that you hear their life story from them. So I'm going to hand over to Sabrina, who's our guest speaker for today. Sabrina, could you just tell us a bit about you?
Absolutely. Well, Jeffrey, thank you very much for inviting me to be a guest. It's an awesome opportunity to be here and discuss with you. So my name is Sabrina Ben Salmi. I am a mother of 5. And if I think back to my university years, it was a mess. So I'm going to tell you what not to do and what you can do. And I've been practicing on my kids to kind of chisel out a blueprint that tends to work over and over again. So I do have neurodiversity. So that is in the essence of being dyslexic. I was a big thinker, always had my head in the clouds. I never quite fit in. I was always kind of a lot different to my peers, and that showed up in many different ways. But I guess because I had so many differences to my peers, it had a big impact on my confidence. And we'll get into that conversation when we're actually speaking with Jeffrey. But I think there's definitely some exciting things that I can share with you today of what not to do, what Sabrina did, but some cool things that I learned how to do along the way.
Oh, thank you for that wonderful introduction, Sabrina. And I think best way to get things started is to dive into the first official question that we'll be asking you. And essentially, students, especially while at maybe more so in their undergrad than their postgrad, will be thinking of, possibly other sources of income and probably looking towards getting jobs while studying. So essentially, we wanted to ask you as our first question, what jobs or job did you do while studying?
I love that question. So while I was studying, I was actually a mature student. So I didn't go to university when all my peers did. So I was a mother. My daughter was 2 at the time. So I actually worked as a temp at an agency. And I found that really great because I had excellent rates and I could work when I wanted to. So it was around my studies, around my childcare, and that worked perfectly for me. But what I can say is that, you're not as ancient as I am. We're talking about way back when, right? Now you have the essence of so much resources at a click of a button, a mobile, a laptop. I think now there is so much more that you can pivot into and get creative, realize where you are and what you can teach as a result of where you're at. You don't need to be 10 steps forward. And I really wish that I had that knowledge and know-how when I was young. But to stick to the question, Jeffrey, I was working as a temp and it worked for me, but I know that I'm a bit of a dinosaur, so it's not quite the same now.
Oh, well, thank you very much for that. And I think, I think it's true that, when you start studying, there's like a wide variety of stuff that you can do. And I think, like you said, one thing to highlight is that specifically I'm talking about Brunel because that's where I go and I know this, but obviously at other universities, they might have this as well. But I know, like you were saying with Brunel, they have a job board where they basically put up this can be for students who are looking for summer internships or summer placements, year placements, full-time or part-time work while doing their studies. And I think, like you said, there are a lot of resources, especially I know one that Brunel definitely likes to promote is the idea of LinkedIn and utilizing LinkedIn for jobs. So yeah, definitely, I think, like you said, there are a wider variety of different things that students now can use that maybe so weren't there, like you said, when you were at university. I guess nicely going on to our next question. I can talk about a bit of some of the jobs that I know students have done or I've done as well. But what are some of the jobs that students can do while studying?
Oh, this bit excites me. I think sometimes we reduce ourselves, we limit ourselves. And I always say to young people, According to who? Where did you get that from? We live in a global world nowadays, right? The computer technology connects us to anywhere around the world. And I think sometimes we need to be a bit more expansive. Sometimes we're just thinking about what's on the doorstep. You are fortunate to go to a great university. Brunel, having the job board. Not every university is really geared up to support their students to go on to source jobs, to know. But I love what you mentioned about LinkedIn. Now, here's the thing. One of the first things I think I would say to anybody, and it's how I raise my kids, is digital positioning. If you type your name into Google, what do people see as a footprint? I think every student, I really am saying this, every student should have their own branding. Quirky K, Cool Chris. I don't care what it is. I know they're terrible names. My kids are going to laugh at me, but I want you to be more playful with it. What is it that you do all day long that's really simple to you, but people go, wow, that's so cool, you're so smart? And think about networking, not just locally, but globally. So I think as students, we need to start being very creative. And if we do this right, by creating a brand, a personality, creating this go-to person, what will happen, which is really amazing, is that we have this upside down bottle effect model happening, whereas you start attracting opportunities to you using platforms such as LinkedIn that Jeffrey mentioned. And I think this is a game changer for students. I think if we get stuck in the old model of going through and waiting to graduate and then start sourcing, what can you do today? I mean, really today, as you're listening to this, like pause the podcast, right? Get a notepad and pen and write it down and go, okay, really cool. What skills do I have? What experience do I have? What's the problem in the world that I want to solve? Let's keep it real. Finding a job, it's being useful to someone else's vision or a vision of your own. But a business is a simple game of finding a problem, coming up with a solution and packaging it. So as students, depending on what course you are, you're constantly taught to remedy problems, right? So look at your position of looking for a job the same. So what problem do you enjoy solving? Or if you don't enjoy it, it kind of pays well and you go, what problem do people keep roping you into, right? So you might find that someone might be asking you for tuition. Like, how can you stand out for the crowd by making this really cool brand? And it's just your personality, but also take a step back, notepad and pen, note this down and say, what can I do now as a job to generate some income now, but also to position myself for the career I'm going into? And I think that's a game changer. If we do some immersive work, it changes everything. Now, the companies that you're trying to position yourself for when you graduate in 1 year, 2 years, or you've just graduated, they're now seeing this digital blueprint of, wow, like, I've noticed that you came up with this great idea. I noticed you're doing this. And do it twofold. Do some for commercial, but do some as voluntary. We've all gone from this pandemic. It's been global. We all understand the pain of that. How can you utilize this time to really practice your craft? So don't use the old model of just getting a job for the sake of it. Start thinking about positioning. How can I make myself an authority? Being a mum of 5, I started to do that really young. I started to think about what different industries do my children desire to immerse into, and how can they get really good at it? One of the best things you could do is publish a book. You might go, yeah, okay, everyone's publishing books, but let's just keep it simple. It can be a picture book, picture on one side, a quote. It can be a picture on one side, an affirmation. As long as it's a purposeful, tongue-tied, as long as it's a purposeful written book, it will do the trick. What you don't understand sometimes is that a book is a business card. And what happens when you give people business cards? Sometimes they tend to put it in the bin. But have you ever met someone you've given a book to, they didn't really like it, and they threw it in the bin? No, chances are it will end up in their bookshelf. Now, what if that book that you write lands on the desk of a CEO of a company you're desiring to go into? It's a great way to showcase your talents. And the chances are, wait for it, they will give you an offer that surpasses your wildest dreams. One of my 10-year-olds was invited to be on a board to mentor men that were 50 and 60, and there was so much going on. And I'm going, oh my God, and let's bring it back home. I met Jeffrey via an amazing woman called Leslie Warren. I call her my fairy godmother. And here he was, 6 years old, marching up to Brunel to do these masterclasses. And he walked out as a STEM ambassador. Like, how cool is that? And I say that to say this. when we position ourselves as experts, as go-to people, the opportunities start springing out, and they often tailor to you. That rolled on to the kids all doing masterclasses, and then thereafter we actually open that out so other homeschool families can come into Brunel. So instead of just looking for a job, look at an icebreaker. You know, when everyone's sitting in the room and they're a bit uncomfortable thinking, don't want to talk, but then that icebreaker lands. Jeffrey, you are awesome at icebreaker. And I love going to the quizzes, the Christmas quizzes. You are awesome at that. But it's a game changer. So how can you create an icebreaker in your career that's going to catapult you to a whole new era of opportunities? So you're not stressed about the job. You'll be stressed about what opportunity to pick. And believe me, it's a real issue, but it's a better quality problem. So I hope that helps.
No, thank you. And I think there should be a round of applause put there, because I think that, like you said, I think first off, with the idea of, students building a brand for themselves, I think that's definitely true. I know during my undergraduate, that was one of the things that sort of led to me starting my LinkedIn page, and other people on my course was so we've mentioned them before as our MC of the month, but Brunel's Professional Development Centre, we've said that if you're a Brunel student and you haven't used them or you don't know about them, please do check them out, because I know specifically the one from my course did a lot of work on building up that digital profile of yourself, because they also said at the end of the day, while it's great that you've got all this stuff on your CV that you've put there, you also need to bear in mind that ideally, like they recommended, your CV has to be 2 pages, and there's only so much information you can put about yourself on 2 pages, which includes all your education, your experience, descriptions about yourself, the things that you've done. So they were saying that LinkedIn is essentially like that other place that people then go and say, okay, so I see you've, worked here, or you've done this. What else can I see that you've done? And it's that idea of, if you don't build that up just yet, like while you're studying, when, like you said, you graduate, it'll then be the time of you're thinking, now I need to start applying for jobs, now I need to start doing things, and actually you'll have already been behind because others would have been doing that already. And that's one of the reasons why, I guess talking about another Brunel thing is why the Brunel Plus Award, if anyone doesn't know, is when you get awarded for doing different things at the university. So sometimes it can be as simple as just being a student ambassador, or having a committee role in a society, or being even a member of a society. But sometimes it's other things. So it's like Sabrina was saying, of like leading workshops with an organization, attending a networking event. It can be LinkedIn Learning. So that's one of the things that the university did this year, which I started to do, and I really think that was a good thing, and fingers crossed they can keep on doing it, is the university's been paying for LinkedIn Learning for all Brunel students. So all the courses on LinkedIn Learning, as a student, you have access to. You can utilize these services and learn courses. And the great thing is there's courses on anything. So whether you want to start a business, you want to learn coding, you want to learn video editing, or you want to be a content creator, and it doesn't even have to be, and that's the great thing, it doesn't have to be like a 2-hour course that you have to do. Some of these courses are just 30 minutes, and they'll just ask you like 1 or 2 questions at the end as a quiz, but as soon as you do that, you can have a certificate added to your LinkedIn profile, but also you get credited for that for Brunel. So I think, like Sabrina said, it's one of those things that if you don't utilize these things, or you don't know about these things, sometimes it doesn't help you to do things that can help you to stand out on your CV. I think secondly, like you were saying, Sabrina, of working on projects, I think that's very true, and I think that's very important, whether that is publishing a book, or like you said, I think you were saying everyone's writing books. I've said before that it feels like everyone's starting a podcast. It's one of those things where it is sort of that icebreaker, like you were saying. So I remember that when, similar to the PDC, that they brought it up as well, that have something on your CV that is different, that someone will look at and say, I saw that, you put on your CV that you did this. What was that all about? So I know one of the things that I really liked about my undergrad course, Environmental Sciences, was that we had to have a module to improve sustainability on campus. So I know some of my friends who led campaigns or worked with organizations to lead campaigns on Brunel. I know for myself, I started an online platform that encouraged people to think sustainably, and we hosted sustainable fashion shows. And that was one of the things that even in my interview that for an organization I applied for my summer placement, that they were just like, oh, so we saw that you do fashion shows. And I was just like, oh yeah. So this is the reason why it started. And it was like what I said before, of, most people probably wouldn't have on their CV that they started a fashion show, or they did something, or they led a fashion show, things like that. But it's something that you can put and people can look and be like, I have no idea what this is about, but I'd love to know more information. And I think lastly, on this idea of jobs, is that students have a wide variety of jobs available to them that you don't need to fully, like as a student at a university, there are like ambassador roles or there's officer roles that you can apply for that can help you, that if you're unsure of what you do want to do, or like what Sabrina was saying, if you don't know exactly which area you want to work in or things like that, they do help you to sort of, I guess, test the field. And you can be like, actually, so I might work as a student ambassador, and I know that as a student ambassador, I have to do campus tours, or I have to, lead talks about a subject. And you might be like, I know from this, I really don't like public speaking, but I really do like the marketing side of it, of encouraging people to come to the university, which means that you're most likely going to want to do a marketing role when you graduate. Or it might be the complete opposite, that you don't like marketing, but you do love public speaking. So that might mean that you want to have a more personal job once you graduate. So I think that, that's really great. And thank you for mentioning that, Sabrina, because I think students sometimes have the tendency to forget that there is a lot of resources available to them, but there's also a lot of things that they can do to improve themselves. And there's never like a too late time, whether that's like the Brunel Plus Award I said, or speaking to the PDC, even if it's like starting a business. I know that Brunel's got an entrepreneur hub that give funding every year, I think about £10,000 to anyone's idea that they want to do funding for, and they support you anyway. So if you wanted to know more about starting a business and stuff like that, so there's a lot of resources available to you. You just need to essentially go out there and essentially speak to these people. So going on to the final episode final question, that we've got for Sabrina today, is essentially, how can working while studying help to prepare students for life after university?
Oh, I love that question. I could speak to you for hours, Jeffrey. I have to hold it back. I think working while studying is going to prepare you for life. It's a life skill. I think we're going into a different era. A lot of people call this the fourth industrial revolution, right? We're going into this technology, digitization. I think we're going to have a very different work life. Before we speak about work-life balance, now you have the average young person working on a variety of projects, be that 3, 4, 5, sometimes even 6, all around the world, coming together. And I think it's just getting you to practice your skills. Work experience, having the experience of implementing workshops, supporting, like what Jeffrey's sharing around ambassadorships, reach out to every opportunity. But one thing I would say is that in an era where there's so much opportunity, yes, it's brilliant. It will definitely prepare you for life. The life skills that you would learn is priceless. But one of the things I want to say that I wish I knew as a young person is that don't be so eager to say yes to everything. Practice the no. You see, there's something so sacred about saying no to others so we can say yes to ourselves. It's like, oh my God, great opportunity. Yes, yes, yes. And you find yourself quite bogged down. Like, how do you manage meeting deadlines? How do you address and adhere to all the commitments you've made? I think it's more important to be able to commit and deliver to what you've got rather than overcommitting and not being able to do anything and get yourself in a bit of a fuss. One of the things I'm really, really serious around is our health is our wealth, and more specifically, our mental health is our wealth, right? So it doesn't matter what we attain in terms of our grades and income. Some of you might be going, yes, it does. But I mean, from the basis of it doesn't matter, because if we don't have our health and our mental health intact, none of it's going to work. We will keep pushing to the point of burnout. Sleep hygiene is something that I don't think is spoken about enough. I know as a student, you don't sleep, your eyes are burning. I remember those years. I was always that student that always did it last minute. I was running around trying to get things printed, and it's really important. And I think for every student listening to this, I want to give you advice that I wish I had. pair up with some sort of accountability partner. I think in a generation where you have so much, it's no longer about being more, doing more, having more, creating more, and how do I this? I think you have so much. It's really about how do I finish what I've started? How do I maximize the output? So if I'm going to work and I'm going to study, how can I maximize that? If I'm going to say yes to something, how can I under promise and over deliver? I think that works far more than anything. So if I think into the future as much as possible, not everyone can do that. Some people are very present. I get that. But if you're someone that can visualize, write down what your future that you desire to call in. And once you've written that vision, think of the vision that follows that thereafter. And something very interesting happens, because when you know the vision, often we have one goal, one vision, and we forget what comes after. And it's very exciting when you have the two to look at. And you'll see that there's incremental steps, but having an accountability partner, having a task or goal setting hygiene master, making up the words here, but it's just making sure that you don't overset goals, you don't over push yourself. I think sometimes less is more. Be very focused on, this year I just want to graduate. I want to make sure I get the right marks, year 1, year 2, and then graduation. How can I have something that's going to actually add to that? So I always say, where possible, because I know it's not always possible, try to have a job that ties into your future desires, because then everything you do is very purposeful. But I love what Jeffrey said. Also diversify. That adds so much excitement. It's like, wow, you did this? Like Paolo, My Little Pint-Sized Adventurer comes to mind. And he is like wacky, breaks the rules. He wants to become an engineer. He broke every toy he had, right? But someone said to me, he's a born engineer. We got George from Brunel, who's one of his mentors. And it's like, no, he's a born engineer. It's normal. It's like, as a mum, that's not cool, okay? He's breaking everything. But now I get it. At least I know what's going on. But he went off and planted 10,000 trees out in Tanzania. He's coupling his grassroots with what, climate activism and what he wants to go into. So don't be scared to diversify. I love what Jeffrey's saying, because it really made me start thinking about, who are you? I think we're getting into the era where people know that you can be smart and you can do this and you can have the grades, but who are we as people? One of the things, let's try and root ourselves in truth and let that truth be who you are. Let's start rebirthing and not being afraid to share with the world who we really are. You might be, a brilliant at mathematics, but on the weekend, you might like to do ballet. So what? Whatever it is, start showing those aspects of yourself, because the chances are you'll be sat in front of someone that's interviewing you and they'll go, no way, I love that. If we start being more of who we really are, we can start to connect as humans. After this pandemic, I think more people than not are really looking for real human connectivity. So if you can build those relationships before you go into the work, imagine if you have a relationship with your CEO long before you turn up for your interview. Imagine having a relationship with the person who happens to be interviewing you. How cool would that feel? So be explorative and sometimes try to step out of the comfort zone. I'm not one that always says do all of it, because I think balance, knowing where, if you really be honest with yourself, public speaking is scary, but maybe we should have it, because we all can agree that at some point in our career, we're going to have to speak or verbalize or present something. And I coach and mentor a lot of adults who are completely scared of public speaking, but they have a presentation to prepare. I myself, I put up both hands on my feet because I had blackouts. I was seeing things. I would get up on stage. I was sweaty. It was a mess. I was a hot mess, okay? So when I became a mom, I was like, I need to teach my kids public speaking as a life skill. It wasn't the case whether you like or not like. We need to be able to be comfortable in our skin, because our fear of public speaking actually goes back to deeper fears, the fear of being judged, the fear of getting it wrong. And one of the secrets in public speaking is that we practice the pause. And when there's a pause, people they start thinking. You ask them a question, practice the pause, and you might have forgotten your lines. And people go, wow, that's so super cool. And you're like, I didn't know what I was going to say next. So these skills can benefit us at different moments in our life, okay? So Jeffrey, I really hope I haven't talked on too much, but I love your questions. It's been absolutely amazing talking to you.
Oh, no, thank you. And I think to break that down a bit, I think first off, yes, 100%, I agree with you. The ability to say no is something that I think especially maybe because as we grow up, we feel like you have to say yes to a lot of opportunities. But like you said, no, being able to say, actually, you know what, I don't want to do this today. I don't really feel like it. It's not really something that I want to do or something like that. But that's definitely a key skill to have. I think also, like you were saying about, like diversifying, I think I either read it or watched it somewhere that for one interview, they basically asked applicants to apply. People were putting their experience on it, saying whatever they had done and their grades and all of this. And then they brought them to the interview and then they said, okay, that's great. So we're not going to ask you anything about your grades or university or anything like this. We want to know about you. We want to know what you do in your spare life, you know, in your spare time in your life. They want to know, like, have you done anything creative? Do you do anything outside of the box? And they were saying it's less about asking questions, knowing that, you know, the person meets the job requirement. That's great. You've got the academic skills. That's amazing. Well done. But they were saying it's more about in a team, you have to be flexible and able to work with different people. You have to be prepared to face challenges. You have to be able to, you know, have resilience and things like that. So while it's great to have these academic grades, like you were saying, that if you don't have those skills to show that you've also got experience in managing a team or running an event or things like that, it can basically hamper your job experience at the end of the day. And I think lastly, like we were saying towards the end, it is very important to have those skills of like public speaking, like you said. And I think that's one of the things that my course sort of like raised as well, is that they were saying that sure, even as an environmental scientist, you might not always be speaking in front of 200 people every day, but they were saying that, you know, you probably will have to present at most to your team, and you might not feel necessarily comfortable speaking to even like 15 people, but you're still going to have to present to them. There might be times when you have to even present to one person, but that person could be someone senior in an organization you're working in. So they were saying that it's always very good to develop these skills. And I think, like you said, just using these opportunities of whether it's, I know for me, one of the things that definitely helped me with public speaking when I was younger was I did drama for GCSE and A level, and that was really good because it taught you about like being able to just do something and not necessarily overthink it, and I think that was one of the things that definitely helped me to be better at public speaking now. Like, I'm not saying that I never get nervous or sometimes like I don't forget stuff, or, you know, I'm reading a script and then it goes over my head. No, I still do, but it's one of those things where sometimes I'm just like, you know what, I'll have a script if I'm going to do a speech, but, you know, if I feel like the script's just going to get in the way, I do sometimes just go off and do my own thing. And yeah, you know, just say like, buy script and just to do what I feel like is right. And I think that that's a skill that especially is very good to have, even not just for public speaking, but in general, because as we all know, sometimes plans don't go the way that we want them to. So being able to say, okay, I had a plan of how this was going to work. It's not going the way I want it to, but how can I still make this work out in the end is really good. And I think that that's one of the good things that having public speaking platforms and doing stuff like whether it's, you know, doing campus tours or, you know, doing small things. I think one of the things that I told, I don't know, I think maybe it was my brother, but one of the things that I said that I started to do from my dad was that my dad can just like talk to anyone. Like he's one of those guys that like you can go shopping with. He'll talk to the person at the cash register. You could get in a cab and he'll be talking to the taxi driver and have a deep conversation with the taxi driver. You can go to a restaurant and he'll be talking to the waiter, and it's just one of the things that he can just do that. And I've always admired that about him, because I've always said that that's something that's really good to have, to just always be able to relate to people and speak to them. And that's definitely something that I've started to do as well, that I said, you know, it doesn't need to be, I don't need to try and say I'm going to be like my dad overnight, but I can just say, you know, let's say I'm at an event and it's just me and I'm, you know, watching it might be like a networking event or it might be like a speaker event. I'm always just like, you know, let me just talk to one person. Just say, you know, at the end of the day, I've spoken to one person, I've had one conversation. And most of the time, I think like what you were saying, Sabrina, that it's just that thing where you genuinely never know what could happen from that conversation, whether or not it's a case of that person then says, oh, actually you're interested in this field, actually my dad works in that field, or I know someone who works in that field and they're currently looking for someone to fill this job. And it's one of those things where it's just about utilizing and starting to build your network. We've got the at the time this episode's come out, we've recorded it, but it's not come out yet. But we do have an episode that talks about the idea of networking, and that was one of the things that we did raise, that having, whether it's going to speaker events or using LinkedIn and just messaging people and saying like, wow, I know that you went to my university, or, you work for this company that I want to work for. I'd love to know more, whether you're free for a phone call or free to just email and I can send over some questions. It's always good to just start to utilize your network and just build off your experience. But yeah, no, thank you very much, Sabrina. It's been great to talk to you today and to learn more about, I guess, not only just studying, but also about the world of networking, I guess, as well, and how we as individuals and especially as students can just build a portfolio before we even leave university, because I think that that's one of the things that a lot of students tend to forget and feel like, actually, we end up just like a group of students who are basically the same thing. The only difference might be the grade that we've got at the end, but we're all the same. We've all done the same thing. And actually, like what you're saying, it's not that. It's actually, some of you can do work placements, or you can do part-time jobs while studying. Some of you can launch projects and do things like that. Some of you can volunteer or get paid work through organizations and things like that. So yeah, I think it's been really great to speak to you. And I guess in our typical fashion, before we let you go, there might be some listeners or anyone watching on YouTube saying, wow, Sabrina is an incredibly talented person. I would love to know a bit more about her. She's been talking about writing books. I want to see where I can get some of her books or know a bit more about her books. So essentially, Sabrina, the question to you is, where can people go to find more information about you?
Oh, Jeffrey, I have enjoyed this so much. Sorry, I really enjoyed it. I just want to echo what you said just before I give some details. Your network is everything. I'm so glad you added that. I forgot to mention, in the grand scheme of things, everything we need to do will be so much shifted, much more shiftable, flowable, if we actually expand our network. Learning the skills, they always say it's not what you know, it's not who you know, but who knows you. Really and truly, as a student, Jeffrey has hit a golden nugget here. Build your network, expand your network. If you find that your network is very prominent in one specific industry, diversify. Utilize LinkedIn. Bruno has some amazing resources. I was like, wow, I had to pick my jaw up off the floor. You have so many resources, like really dive in, take a deep dive. But on top of that, expand your network. Developing relationships and network expansion is not discussed enough. That is the difference that will make the difference, because when you're connected to the right people who are creating the opportunities, they will come to you because you're in the network. And the things that they will offer you, you will just be blown away, okay? So like my eldest daughter's 21, she was in a hobby around Korean, like teaching herself how to speak Korean and Korean videos. She managed to actually go and work with the Korean Culture Center. We've flown out to Korea. She's been awarded an award from the Korean First Lady, the First Lady of South Korea, and not North, I make sure I have to say. And the network is everything. There was a host of opportunities that came out of that. We went to Korea for a quiet holiday. We ended up on the Korean news, and it was just a whirlwind of just pure magic. But it's as a result of the network. So I say this to answer actually to reinforce what Jeffrey says, but I will go back and answer the question you actually asked me, Jeffrey. I'm so sorry. But yeah, so network, please. Don't do anything if you just sit still, just network, okay, please. So to answer the question, my name's Sabrina Ben-Salma. You can type that into Google and there'll be a host of things that come up. We have a family website that's called Life, A according to Lachey. Lachey is spelled Lashai, and there is a family page on there. If you click on services, you'll be able to see the publishing that we offer. We actually help people to become authors, or if they're really looking for some legacy work, they can actually set up their own publishing houses. That's another conversation for another time. So we offer a host of services there. If you type Sabrina Ben-Salmi into LinkedIn, TikTok, not so well diverse, but Instagram, my kids said, Mum, no. Just keeping it transparent. Transparency is key. So I can be found on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. But like I said, you can put Ben-Salmi into Google or Sabrina Ben-Salmi, and it will bring a host of opportunities to connect with us. Thank you.
No, thank you. And as always, if you liked this episode, a like, comment, and subscribe is always appreciated. Make sure you click the notification bell so you don't miss the next episode of our Pick Up the Mic content. If you're not already a Patreon member, then make sure that you are, so you can get full access to some of our episodes, and you can also get some early access to some of them too, as well as some additional things. And finally, I guess the most important thing to say is thank you again for listening and watching in to Pick Up the Mic. It's been great to have you guys as our audience. And we will see you next time when we do another episode of Behind the Curtain. So that's a bye from us here. Wish you all the best. Have a lovely day and speak to you all soon.